For the last stretch of your weekend report. Now, while the local government elections are still a hot-button topic, we thought we should look back at a moment that sent chills down everyone's spine. That was when President Jacob Zuma, at the time, started his remarks at the 2016 IEC local government elections announcement ceremony. 4 women stood before the stage to demonstrate in silence. The women, dressed in black, held posters which read, "I am 1 in 3, hashtag 10 years later, Kanga and remember Khwezi." The posters referred to allegations of the woman that Zuma was accused of raping 10 years ago at the time. When President Zuma concluded his speech, the women were violently thrown out of the National Results Center. Now, 5 years later, we are joined by 2 of them who took part in that protest, UCT Gender Studies Lecturer Simamkele Dlakavu and social justice activist Mavuso. A very good morning to the both of you all. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. A very important topic because it remains so topical in South Africa. Let's start with you, Amanda, just about that day. Talk to us how it came together. What did you guys decide upon, and how quickly was that decision made? I think Amanda's screen is frozen. Simamkele, if you heard that question, do go ahead and answer that for me, please.
It was an impromptu protest. We decided to do it on the day, actually on our way to the IEC, myself and Nico Shikwambane, a friend of mine who, both of us had been working at the IEC the whole week as part of various media organizations at the time. And on our way to the IEC Center in Pretoria, we saw a news report that the former President Jacob Zuma was going to be addressing the election announcement. Prior to that, I think about 2 weeks before that event, Nico and I had attended a 1 in 9 10-year commemoration or remembrance, day of remembrance outside the Johannesburg High Court. The Johannesburg High Court is where justice was denied to Khwezi 10 years prior to that day. And so we were part of that day of remembrance. We had been mobilizing with the 1 in 9 campaign through various initiatives, whether it is through the silent protest that they had started during the trial in support and solidarity with the accuser, and in other protests of solidarity, such as the RU reference list, such as the I am 1 in 3 protests. And so Nico and I felt it would be inappropriate for us to listen and be addressed by Jacob Zuma without some kind of solidarity message to Khwezi and other rape survivors in the country and other women who have been denied justice when they chose to speak out. So Nico and I reached out to Amanda Mavuso and Naledi Chura to be a part of the protest because they were, I think, the only young women who we knew were feminist activists in the room who would partake in the protest with us without triggering any security concerns.
And I mean, it was eventually seen as a security breach. Amanda, the former president at the time had been acquitted of these rape charges 10 years prior to that. Why was it so important to still go up on stage and show that the support?
About this, as Sima mentioned, it was more also about solidarity, and it was also to actually remind him that regardless of having been past the 10-year period, this happened, but just because you are acquitted, it doesn't mean that we forgot. It doesn't mean that we actually believe that you are innocent. So it was more than just about that moment that happened. It was also reminding other women that regardless of what the justice system does, but regardless of the acquittal that is always favored to man all the time by the justice system. But we always remember that there's women who are actually violated by men daily. So it was mostly just about reminding the man, it was also reminding the president himself, the former president himself, that we remember, we know what you did. You are in this position of power at this point, but we know what you did, and we believe Khwezi.
Amanda, just for the sake of framing, I do want to ask you to just sit back when you do answer your question so that we can see you in your entirety when you do reply. Simamkele, now, at that time, the president of the ANC Womens League, Dlakavu, came out scathing, in a defense of the former president, saying that you humiliated him. That, of course, wasn't something that would have gone down well for you, with you guys. What did you make of that defense from Dlakavu at the time?
I wasn't surprised, truly I wasn't surprised, because if we remember history correctly, is that the ANC Womens League defended Jacob Zuma during the rape trial. It chose to protect and promote a perpetrator, an accused perpetrator, instead of defend the rights and dignity and beings of women in this country, who they claim to represent. So I wasn't shocked at all, because history did demonstrate that the ANC Youth League chose power, chose patronage, and chose patriarchal violence over women.
Let's talk about that security breach, Amanda. It was, of course, very harrowing to see the way you guys were removed. First of all, it was surprising that you were able to stand there for the entire 7 minutes of the speech, but the scenes that followed were very scary. Where did they take you? How was that removal, and what happened after you disappeared from the sights of the media?
Joe, that was very violent and very shocking. Immediately when we were removed by that private security, of course, we're manhandled in a very violent way. And of course, we're mad, we were fighting, we were scared for our lives. We didn't know what was going to happen. However, we got our comrades. Some of them actually they actually took us in. They actually went to one of our comrades' house, and that's where we actually, I think, we spent a few hours, if not the whole entire night until around 3 a.m. Just replaying everything and talking about everything. And at a certain point, I feel like even ourselves, as much as we were sure that we were doing this, but we were still shocked because we did this. And now the whole entire country is their eyes are on us. It's going to
Simamkele,
or rather the president, the former president himself.
Yeah.
Scary. It was scary for a couple of days after that. We were scared for our lives, and I remember I even had to move from my place. I stayed at a friend's place because of that. So, because you never know such things, people would go through everything just to get your way about, just to make sure that you pay what you did. And at this point, we knew that we had angered a lot of people, and they were not happy about what we did. But it wasn't about that again.
So, Simamkele, in closing, 5 years on, how has your activism changed? Of course, you are now a lecturer as well. How's life now?
I never anticipated the feminist response that we got, because we need to realize during the time of the trial, only a few women, the women who formed the 1 in 9 campaign and the entire coalition, Gender Justice Coalition, supported Khwezi. At the time, it was unpopular to support her because Zuma was so powerful, even powerful within the left. So many people who now claim to support her didn't. And so, although the response was violent in various, terrains, the feminist solidarity and feminist, fire that was erupted after that protest was so inspiring to us. And I now, in my current work, as also a PhD candidate, I'm looking at, feminist activism in post-apartheid South Africa. And I speak about how, for instance, the formation of the 1 in 9 campaign, which inspired us at the time, me and Amanda were like in primary school at the time of that rape trial. However, that stuck to us, as survivors also, right? One in 3 women, as one of the placards showed you, are victims or survivors of violence, whether it's gender-based violence or whether it's sexual violence. And so for me, knowing that it wasn't in vain, knowing that a few years later the total shutdown happened, knowing that a few years later now in 2020 we finally have a national strategic plan on gender-based violence and femicide. That plan wouldn't have been possible without feminist direct action, and us choosing to hold that protest will contributed to a lineage of feminist and direct action.
Simamkele Dlakavu, she is a UCT Gender Studies Lecturer. Thank you so much for your time. And social justice activist Amanda Mavuso, also thank you. These two women, or 2 of 4, who demonstrated at the 2016 IEC elections announcement as the then President Jacob Zuma took to the podium, a time in our history that I'm sure will not be forgotten, at least not anytime soon.